Well, if you are happen to three, two, one. If you happen to be in southern Alberta this spring, even at this particular time, keep your eyes upwards. You might be fortunate enough to see a ferruginous hawk. And the reason why I say fortunate enough is because these critters are pretty well endangered here in Alberta. And there is a new plan, a revised plan to see more of them on the Alberta landscape, especially in that southeast corner of Alberta. And to help fill in some blanks for us, it's a real pleasure to welcome Brad Downey. He is a biologist with the Alberta Conservation Association, and he has worked incredibly hard on this new recovery plan. Brad, first of all, thanks so much for taking a little time chatting with us today.
Thank you, Michael.
So, as I mentioned, these hawks are coming back from their winter migration. Give us a sense right now of the current status of ferruginous hawks in Alberta.
So ferruginous hawks, they're considered an endangered species currently in Alberta, and a threatened species actually nationally, so throughout Canada. These species are quite unique, right? They're our largest hawk we have in North America. Quite a beautiful species, bright white on the bottom, with red legs. So if you're out and about and you see these magnificent hawks, you can they stand out quite a bit. And of course, these hawks are loved by many landholders and ranchers alike because they eat ground squirrels and they can help with that pest control.
In terms of the current threats, obviously their population numbers have fluctuated over the years. I think we're starting to see a slight increase, and that I imagine gives you some hope to the work that you're planning to do over the next few years. But what are some of the steps that have to be taken in order for them to get over the hump, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I've of all the species at risk, I think ferruginous hawks have a really good potential for recovering. Um, Basically, for disturbances, for threats that we find for ferruginous hawks, it comes down to some of the basic stuff for a lot of species, and that's loss of habitat, right? Cultivation, loss of the native grasslands. So, implementation and policy and efforts to protect grasslands is very important, not only for ferruginous hawks, but for many other species. Other factors include, historically there's persecution, and unfortunately there still is some people that will shoot ferruginous hawks. There's huge fines with that, so please do not do that. These are very valuable species that serve a great purpose, including taking care of our pest species sometimes, or the richness of ground squirrels, that are native out there. There's also things like their migration threats from that. When the young are hatched and they fledge, their survival the first year might only be about 55% with migration, and that could be for a whole slew of things, right? Collisions and you name it. Industrial development, there's a lot of new mitigation and work out there to help prevent disturbance of nests. They can be very sensitive disturbance during egg laying, and so the disturbance around the nest can cause them to abandon that nest at certain times. So there's mitigation around that. And then other threats include predators, great horned owls. They are known to take young out of the nest and attack adults. And finally, just nest site availability. A lot of these nest sites out there, they'll try to nest in some small willows or kind of flimsy trees, and the nests will fall out, during wind events and storms, and so they lose that production that year. So for us, for a lot of work that we do at ACA, we do a lot of nest site protection and artificial nest platform installation just to provide secure nesting sites for them to use. And we've seen the benefits of that. Landholders have come and told us that, they found nests on the ground years in a row. We put a hawk pole up for them, and that same nest produces 5 young, which is incredible for an endangered species. So it just tells you what was lost the past 2 years.
As I understand it, Brad, the last management plan for these hawks was somewhere in the 2009 time frame. With this new one coming out now, what specifically has changed? What are the tools that you have at your disposal to ensure that the hawks have a path forward?
I think there's been more specific statements for hawk protection for the nest sites, right? So basically, if a hawk nests at a particular site in 2000, like say 2023, they nest at a site, then in 2024, if they don't return to that particular nest or tree, it's still considered active. So whether or not they're there or not, it's still active. And then in 2025, that same tree is still considered an active nest until about June 10th. After June 10th, it's considered inactive. So basically, it's strengthening the fact that for 2 years, that that nest is active, which means it provides them a potential site to use and nest at, right? And so we want to protect those nesting sites for this species. The other thing from 2009 on, we have done a lot more artificial nest platforms out there. There's guidelines on where to put those. A lot of landholders have installed them themselves too, and taken up that opportunity. And I think that's been a huge benefit for this species, especially having those secure sites when you have high ground squirrel numbers, Richardson's ground squirrel numbers, right? So when the prey is available and you can actually provide secure nesting sites that aren't going to blow down, it benefits the population immensely.
What's the ultimate goal here? I know that it's been difficult to put an actual verifiable number of nesting pairs or birds in Alberta, but do you have an end goal in sight?
Yeah, our goal for the recovery team is 1,300 pairs. That's our stated goal. That's our long-term goal. And that's based on average of three surveys. So we survey every 5 years. And so the average population after, looking at all 3 years, we'd hope to see is about 1,300 pairs. Currently, our short-term goal was to try to get them up to about 800. And our average over the last three surveys is actually 900 and some. So we've met our short-term goal. And I think our long-term goal is very achievable because our last survey in 2022, we actually identified 1,400 pairs in 1 year. So if we can maintain that population over the next two surveys, we will meet our recovery goal. So it looks very positive.
You've mentioned numerous times that the Richardson ground squirrel is I guess meal number one for these hawks. And so one would say, well, protecting their habitat has got to be something that is critical, or at least allowing them to continue to populate and be available as a food source. So how does that play into, because as you also said, landowners not all that happy with these burrowing critters. So I guess talk about that dichotomy a little bit, Brad.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah. Richardson's ground squirrels, they're a keystone species out in the grasslands, right? Their burrows are used from everything from bumblebees to modified for swift foxes and other species. But for Fruson's hawks, they're their main prey, right? And when we're talking about Richardson's ground squirrels, we're talking about just tolerance, and having some on your land, not trying to wipe them all out, but there's going to be times where you're going to have extreme populations, and we understand that other measures are needed. But having Fruson's hawks out there can sure help manage those populations for you. I mean, a breeding pair can eat up to, they say, 500 ground squirrels in a breeding season. And then you have the young and everyone else flying around later on in the year. So it can provide a more natural means to help with that and help with some of that control. But yeah, we just ask, it's more the tolerance and understanding the value that Richardson's ground squirrels have as well when it comes to the grassland ecosystem.
So obviously, landowners are a critical partner in this whole process. Talk about some of the other partners that came together in putting this revised management plan together.
Yeah, we had industry partners such as ElkLink on the team as well, and they have their avian protection plan and other measures to help reduce, electrocution or collisions of raptors on lines. The government of Alberta obviously was involved, and then many NGOs, landholders, and the likes. Producer groups are important, and like you mentioned at the start, all this isn't possible without landholders, right? They've really uh, Fruson's hawks, they've really taken protection to for them. When they put the hawk poles up, it's kind of this their hawk. They've really tied themselves to those hawks because of their way to help with ground squirrels. But it's great to see, and that's why you see some of these polls going up and people welcome these hawks onto their land. It's a very positive news story for that when it comes to grasslands and rancing and species at risk. These are all compatible.
Of course, the Alberta Conservation Association and other groups have invested heavily in southeastern Alberta in terms of securing conservation sites. Out of the sites, and I hate to put you on the spot here, but out of the sites that you have available to you, Brad, how many would fall in that category of being prime ferruginous hawk territory? And I guess maybe talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing to encourage them to literally put up a home.
So for some of the land we own, I mean, so Furze's hawks, they can be found from the Porcupine Hills, foothills, all the way across the Saskatchewan border and north to up to Consort, Hannah area up north. So we have a bunch of land throughout there. A lot of it is just protecting the trees we have, whether that's protecting or fencing some of the lone cottonwood trees. Oftentimes cattle use that for rubbing on and for shade, which is great. But if we can protect that, prevent it from being damaged and falling over, then that's important for fruitless hawks as well, right? We do fencing projects. We do watering projects as well, ways to protect trees and riparian areas that also could support fruitless hawks. We have a number of sites of ACA sites that support hawks, whether it's on trees or cliff sides. They can nest on cliffs, they can nest on top of hoodoos, they can nest on slopes as well. So they're quite versatile. But most of the hawk work we do comes back to a lot of the work we do with our multi-star project and our stewardship projects with the ranching community out in the landscape. Yeah.
Well, it's always great to have a positive news story and one certainly surrounding a species that has had trouble here getting reestablished. So, Brad, we wish you and all your partners continued success with the recovery program and look forward to checking in with you from time to time to see how everything's going.
Sounds great, Michael. Thank you.